What's good, gamers? We are staying on topic of the Raider in this video. I'm having a lot of fun playing the Raider at the minute. After his buffs in the most recent patch and with the Dreg Lord Relic and, you know, all the other builds that you can actually run with him, because he does have a variety of different builds you can actually use with him now that make him very viable and very overpowered. It's time to discuss one of the best relic setups you can run for the Raider, arguably one of the best setups because of how much damage you get out of it. Now, there will be some people in the community that just are not a big fan of the relic setup, because honestly, it can be quite tedious to actually have to use in practice, and then there will be other people that will tell you this is the best thing since Jesus walked on water. So, I'm going to break it down today. We're going to go through the pros and the cons, and we're going to give you some more forced content. So, the question we're looking at today, is the Dreg Lord Relic Raider build worth it? Right off the bat, I want to say that I cannot tell you whether something is worth it. That's entirely personal. The value comes down to how much time and enjoyment you get out of the thing and whether that feels worthwhile to you. You know, one man's treasure is another man's trash and all that malarkey. What I can do though is we're going to talk about the pros and the cons, and by the end of the video you should have everything you need to make an informed decision on whether the relic setup is worth it. Now, the most popular version of the Dreg Lord Relic build at the moment is the Dreg Lord Relic with the Libra Relic and Rot or Poison below max HP. So that's what we're going to look at today, and that's what we're going to dissect. Personally, I prefer using continued HP loss and the Rot below max HP, but the most popular version that seems to be out at the minute is the Dreg Lord Relic with the Libra Relic. So let's be a negative Nancy and we'll talk about the cons first, because it's much easier to talk about the bad than it is the good. First of all, the build itself requires you to have 3 specific passives in place to make it work. And for that reason, you're already forced into having 3 different relic slots taken. You would need the Dreg Lord Relic, the Libra Relic, and on your deep relics you need something like Poison or Rot below max HP. Now, you don't need that. You can actually find that on weapon passives when running through the expedition. But if you're basing your build, your entire build off the Dreg Lord Relic, and you're hoping to find Rot or Poison below max HP, you're already setting yourself up for failure. So, con number 1, you need 3 slots taken up for this build. Con number 2, this build requires you to be constantly under max HP, which for the Raider is actually okay, because the Raider is going to be under max HP a lot of the times anyway, because you're using his character skill, the Retaliate skill, to tank an attack, and you know, with the Deep Relic you're going to be using his character skill which reduces the enemy damage. You're automatically going to be under max HP a lot of the times. Now, the reason this might be a con is because you're not going to have the Retaliate skill consistently unless you're also running other relics to make it build up a lot faster. So there are going to be times where none of your damage negation is kicked in, especially early game, where you're going to be one shot consistently. Con number 3, everyone's been in those tedious boss fights where the team just isn't gelling very well. You're not doing very well overall, you've used all your resources up, you are now in the shit because you're under max HP and you have Rot or Poison that's built up and it's killing you over time. It's now no longer a battle of attrition, it's now kill that boss as fast as possible before the Poison or the Rot takes you out. Con number 4, you need to consistently have a status bar on your screen. You need to make sure that you're not walking into Graces accidentally. You need to make sure as soon as you've killed a boss, you need to be sitting down and using the Libra Relic to make sure you don't lose that damage buff. And if you do lose the damage buff, you are now having to wait 3 minutes to get that damage back up to 45%. Con number 5, when you're in a very good team and everyone's working together really well, you're gelling, the enemies are getting absolutely ripped apart, you've got your 45% damage buff because you've consistently been able to keep it on the screen, your teammate comes over and drops a Warming Stone right underneath your feet, or your Scholar hits his ult and your damage has now all been taken away because they've healed you. There is just too many factors when playing with random teammates that can essentially take away your buff. You know, even things like a teammate having Flask also heals allies. That can just remove your buff because you're now at full health, you're going to lose the status bar, and you're not going to be able to sit down and use the Libra Relic mid-boss fight. Con number 6, whilst we're on the subject of teammates, if you're playing the Raider, you're playing the Raider for one reason. You want to be tanking the enemy attacks, keeping the aggro, so you can have your other characters spamming their L2 button now, which is the Balancer Relic stuff, you know, or having a caster doing their pew pew. So if you're using the Dreg Lord Libra Relic setup, you're going to be behind in a lot of fights, because if you accidentally lose your buff, you're now having to sit down to proc the Madness on yourself, so you're consistently going to be behind your teammates, and they're probably going to be defeated the boss before you even get there, especially with the Balancer Relics these days because of how strong it is. So the tank Raider that you've picked to play is now just the sitting down Raider because your teammates are killing all the bosses and you're behind them because you accidentally walked into a Grace. Now, there are probably more cons than that, but I think that's probably enough. You get the idea. There are some cons to the build. That's not to say that's just this build. There are cons to every build that you run, and it sounds like I'm being quite negative towards the Dreg Lord Relic. I really enjoy the Dreg Lord Relic. I think it's a very good build for the Raider, and it is definitely one of his best builds because of how much damage you get. But you know, for the sake of making sure this is all correct, I will give pretty much every con that I can think of. So now let's talk about the pros. Pro number 1, you get a shit ton of damage. As soon as you have the status bar on the screen for 3 minutes, you now have 45% extra damage, which I believe from a single relic is the biggest damage buff you can actually get. So sure, 45% damage is insane. Pro number 2, and this might actually not be a pro for the Dreg Lord Relic Raider build, but it is a pro for the Relic. When you eventually get rotted, you get health recovery, so it works really well in the Dreg Lord fight. Again, you don't really want to be healed as the Raider when using the Dreg Lord Relic because, you know, there's a chance that you're going to lose your buff. But overall, the Dreg Lord Relic healing is a pro. Pro number 3. When you take damage, you can have rot on your weapon, which isn't going to work that well for the Raider because he has really low arcane, unless you're using his arcane relic. But overall, in some scenarios, you are going to rot the enemy, and that's obviously a pro. Right, final pro, and this is a pretty big one. This relic setup requires no RNG. Defeat the Dreg Lord, defeat Libra, you have the relic setup. So, concluding that section, this is what the pros and the cons look like. So, with the pros and the cons out of the way, let's talk about the reason you're using the Dreg Lord Relic. You're using it for the 45% damage increase. Now, you have to weigh out the pros and the cons and decide whether 45% damage increase is worth the tediousness of having to set it up. Now, of course, some people will tell you it's not very tedious to set up. They are telling you, porcupines, it's very tedious to set up. It's whether you can be bothered to actually go through that process of setting it up. So, 45% for 3 relics. Let me give you another setup that has the same amount of relics, you can get just as much, if not even more damage out of, and it has no tediousness when setting it up. First up, we have Raider's personal character skill. The damage taken whilst using the character skill improves attack power and stamina. Now, of course, this requires you to take the hit whilst using the retaliate skill. This gives you a 10% damage increase and a 20% stamina recovery increase for 20 seconds. Then we have taking attacks improves attack power. Pretty much every time you take an attack, you're going to be getting a 15% damage increase, and this is for 10 seconds. So already on our first relic, we have 25% damage increase. In fact, it's actually more than that because it's multiplicative, whereas the Dreg Lord Relic is a 45% flat damage increase because each stack is additive, not multiplicative. Next up, we have improved attack power with 3+ colossal weapons equipped. Now, as soon as you have 3 of the colossal weapons in your inventory, you get a flat 20% damage increase. So already with 2 relics, we are at 45%, but it's actually more than that, but essentially we're at 45% damage increase. And finally, if you didn't want to run Night Invaders, which is something I would advise, you could just use an improved colossal weapon attack power. This gives you a 9% damage increase just from using a colossal weapon attack power. Now, of course, this build here, you would be stuck using colossal weapons. Honestly, if you're using the Raider, you want to make the most use of his charge attack on the colossal weapons anyway, so it's not really a big issue. Yes, I hear you, but Mike, that means you have to be stuck using colossal weapons. Sure, fine, okay, let me give you a different build that has no tedious setup. You can get just as much, if not more, damage out of it, and it's very easy to use. You've probably guessed it. 3 times initial standard. Again, we're only looking at the base relics, so you could actually have 6 of these, and you know, you could mix and match all of these around with your deep relics. But essentially, 3 times initial standard, you're getting a 45% damage increase right off the bat, just swinging your R1. Now, I know what you're thinking. All of these can be mixed and matched with the Dreg Lord Relic, so you know, you can just put these together and get even more damage than I'm showing you here. But my point is, there is more than one way to skin a cat, and the Dreg Lord Relic is not the only way you can get a massive damage boost just using the Raider. So gamers, there isn't really much else to talk about. I mean, I could sit here and talk all day about the Raider. I could easily turn this into a 20-minute video of different builds to make him have, you know, 45% plus damage, but there's really no point because you kind of get what I'm talking about, hopefully, at this point. There is obviously some tediousness when setting it up, but when you do set it up, it can work very well. So, is the Dreg Lord Libra Relic build worth it? Again, as I mentioned at the start of the video, that is something you need to decide for yourself. You need to decide whether you think it's worthwhile, or whether you just want to throw on some relics, have the damage increase from pretty much at the start of the run consistently the whole way through, not have to go through the tediousness of having to sit down, build the status bar up, so on and so forth. This is something you would need to decide for yourself. So hopefully gamers, that has given you some food for thought. Let me know in the comments what you think. Let me know if you do think the Dreg Lord Relic is his best build. Personally, when I run the Dreg Lord Relic, I like to run continued HP loss with rot below max HP. Whether it's better than the Dreg Lord Relic, I can't really say. It's, you know, all down to personal preference, whether you can be bothered to keep sitting down and having to get the status bar back on your screen, or whether you just run the continued HP loss. And if you can't get under the 85% max HP, just go and get hit by a trash mob and start the buff off that way. So gamers, if you're still here and you enjoyed the video, do me a favor, hit the sub button. It does help a brother out massively. Drop a like and a comment, or don't. Do whatever you want. I'm not your dad. I can't tell you what to do. As always, stay safe. Catch you on the next one. Big love. Peace.